there. My name is Wendy Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to the Elementary Physical Education Chat Phys Ed Summit. We are ever so grateful to the leadership of the Phys-Edagogy team who led the way and blazed the trails and led some groundwork for us to be able to do this. Feel free to ask any questions go along the group chat and ask questions. We'll leave some time at the end and I'll be collecting the questions. If some of the questions have something to do with what Adam's talking about, I might interject if it seems like it's an appropriate time. So hopefully I'll get all your questions in. If not, we'll give you Adam's Twitter address so you can get a hold of him. So at the end, I'm going to say this twice. So at the end, make sure that you fill out the reflection form so that you get credit for attending. If you're struggling right now getting on, hopefully you are on. If you aren't on and you're struggling with getting on, I'm not sure. I don't have anybody on chat telling me that they're not getting on. But if you're struggling with it, just go into Tozzle and click on the live YouTube feed, and you'll be able to get there right away. With that said, I'd like to introduce you to Adam Mullis, who incidentally is experiencing his first year of teaching, and he's brave beyond his years to be sharing with us tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to take you to Adam. Here you go, Adam. Have fun.
All righty. This is my first time, so we might have some technical difficulties, but we'll work through it. I'm going to share my screen. Alrighty, can you see my screen, Wendy?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Alrighty, good to go?
Go for it. Have fun.
Alrighty, and this is Teamwork Makes the Dream Work by me. And yes, I am a first-year teacher. I teach 6th through 8th grade health and physical education, and I'm also the assistant volleyball coach in Columbia, South Carolina. For my team building experience, I've worked 4 years at a high ropes course. I also worked as a camp counselor with first graders, and I've coached gymnastics and tumbling for 4 years now. And in college, I've also was an orientation leader, so I had experience doing a lot of team building activities with college-age students. So for my goals for today, I want to explain why debriefing and reflecting are so important for students in team building. I want to give the people watching, teachers, as many activities as possible to bring into your classroom. I want to show some ideas that I've seen to assess team building that includes technology, give you other resources from other educators to use for team building, and discuss other ideas I have for team building that I think you could bring to your school. So here we go. First thing I want to talk about is why use team building. I think team building is a great way to meet Standard 4 and 5 of Shape America's national standards. It can also be a great way to show students your rules and expectation. I've used it with coaching a lot to help team members find a common experience. And I also think there's so much more that teachers teach besides standards, what I call teaching life. And I think team building is an excellent way to do that. So here we go. The first thing I wanted to start with is a very simple activity that I like to do that I think a lot of PE teachers, especially in elementary school, are familiar with, which is the parachute. So I'll take you through the process of what I would do with team building. So of course, I would explain the activity. If any student chose not to participate, and that's okay. I like to incorporate what I call challenge by choice. So it is their choice if they want to participate and not. Of course, I want them to. I may ask them to, encourage them to, but of course, we don't make a student participate. The goal of this activity was to work together to shoot the blocks as high as possible. So here we go. Here's a little video. Whoops. There. And you have to of course, the students enjoyed this a lot, and we have a good time for it. But then comes the reflection part of this piece. So my goal at the beginning of this was to incorporate teamwork into this activity, and I wanted them to understand what teamwork means and how that's going to affect their day. So I started asking them questions. What'd you like about this game? What didn't you like about this game? What was difficult about this game? What made it easy? And I give them time to think about what they think about the game and what they answer. And then I start asking them more in-depth questions like, can you compare the parachute to our class? And you might be surprised by your students' answers sometimes if you really ask these open-ended questions and let them think on it. So when we did this activity, the students told me that the parachute was very different. It had different colors. It was unique, just like our class. And what I wanted them to see, that even though the parachute was very different, just like our class, if we have a common goal and work together, we can achieve anything. And that's something that is very hard to explain, but through a team building activity can really make it concrete for children, help them understand what teamwork and some of these abstract things we try to teach are. So here are my keys to team building. I talked a little bit about it earlier, challenge by choice and comfort zone. So we always want students to participate, but if we force them to participate, it won't mean as much to them. What we want them to do is choose to step outside their comfort zone. So whatever we're trying to do, whatever activity we want them to participate in is more meaningful to them. Have the end goal in mind. What that means is, of course, I wanted my students to realize, what teamwork meant. And that was my end goal. So the questions I had prepared, I wanted them to steer them toward that. And of course, letting them reflect, reflection. So having the students think about what they just did instead of just going on to another game. And I think John Dewey sums it up in this quote in the corner here. We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on that experience. So from the way I was taught with team building, this kind of sums it up. This is Kolb's model of experiential learning. So you have the individual group experience, and then you review and reflect on the experience, draw meaningful conclusions, and then make a plan, and then transfer it back to the real world, which is what I tried to do with my students during the parachute game. You see down here some guidelines for team building activities, and some of them include be interested and be engaged in the debriefing process, ask insightful open-ended questions. I can't see. There we go. Oops, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Keep it simple. Make sure whatever your goal is for that day, that you stick to that goal. So if it is teamwork and you're doing team building activities, that you stick to that. That way you can make it really concrete in students' minds. And also, it's okay if they automatically don't raise their hand. It's okay to embrace the awkward silence because students may be thinking. And I'm going to show you a quick video to explain what I just said. So give me a second. There we go. And this is on the Tozzle if you need it. There we go. Wendy, can you see the video? Alrighty, give me 1 second to get back to the PowerPoint. So what did I want to show? What I wanted to show by this video was that if we add the reflection process for our students, they're more likely to learn from our activities and team building games that we want them to, the goals that we want them to learn from. So for the next part of our presentation, I'm going to go through a lot of activities. Some you may have heard of, some you may, hello? Some you may not have heard of yet. But I'll go through them and then we'll talk about what you could teach from this and what I've taught from this in my different experiences. So something that is very easy to play that I consider a team building game is called blob tag. It's when you start with 2 students and they can be considered the blob or the blobs. When they tag someone else, they have to link elbows. So eventually you'll have 2 different blobs running around trying to tag people, and when they tag someone, they link arms. Always want to think about safety and make sure students don't sling each other down or trip over each other. They're being careful. But the real important thing about this game is what could we teach from this? Obviously, you could talk about teamwork and trusting each other, and allowing them to reflect on what worked well when you were a team and what didn't work well, as well as cooperation. I always like to ask the question, is what happened if somebody didn't want to link arms with you or didn't follow the rules of the game? What happened? And whatever you want to focus on, whether it be team building or cooperation, then that's what you can start asking questions to. So we're going to move on. This game is called Hey Cool Me Too. And I'll go back to PowerPoint mode here. And so I like this game because it can be played with a large number of students. It's very simple. It's a great way to learn names. It's also a great way to learn things about your students as well. So everyone will need to make a circle with one student in the middle. And that one student in the middle will need to say, "Hi, my name is." So if I was in the middle, I'd say, "Hi, my name is Adam." The group would repeat, "Hey, Adam." And then I would say something about myself, like I like the color blue. And if anyone else liked the color blue, then they would have to move to a different spot in the circle. Of course, that means that there would be a new person in the middle, and the person who was just speaking would find a place inside the circle. So, of course, you have to remind the students to walk because we don't want them running into each other, and not to fight over spots. But you could teach some really interesting things. Of course, learning names is very important at the beginning of the year. But also, that we all have something in common and that we're all not so different because, we have things in common. And that's what I like to teach my students about things even though we might look different or even though we might come from different places, we have something in common with everyone. The next activity I call Cannonball Pass. The goal of this activity is to pass different balls around in a circle. So depending on how many students you have, you'll have to split them up into smaller groups. And that's okay because we want everybody to have their own experience. And if the circles are too big, then we have a lot of waiting time. So the type of balls that I would suggest would be a tennis ball, old coffee can, beach ball, and volleyball. It really doesn't matter as long as they're different sizes, but that's just something I like to use. And depending on your age of your students and their ability level, you might make the ball smaller or bigger, depending. I like to always start off with the biggest ball I have, which in this case would be a beach ball, and ask them to pass it around the circle clockwise without using their hands. And at first they say, "How are we going to do that?" But you let them think about it and use those critical thinking skills, and they figure out how they can move it around. Sometimes it'll surprise you. Other times, you might have to give them a hint depending on what you want to do. But they ended up figuring out that they can still use their arms to pass the ball around. Then you can add another ball into the circle and have it go the opposite way. So if one was going clockwise and the other would be going counterclockwise, and they have to get both balls completely around in the circle. If the students master that, then you can add the can, which is the old coffee can, and they have to pass that around with their feet. If they can get that, then you could add the tennis ball in the coffee can and make it more challenging. There's lots of variations to this game. But what's really important is how you reflect. And the thing I like to reflect on is, first of all, I always ask them, pretty much my go-to question is, what'd you like about this game? What didn't you like about this game? What was challenging? What was easy? And, a lot of the times they say trying to keep everything up in the air was very challenging. Then I ask them, can you relate that to school? Can you relate that to your life right now? And especially at the beginning of school, you can see how students are very overwhelmed, and it's like trying to keep a bunch of balls up in the air at one time. I also ask them, what can we do to help them, or help ourselves out, or help other people that might be overwhelmed? And was it similar in this game? So in Cannonball Pass, what ends up usually happening is that students will end up helping each other out to pass the ball from one person to another. And that's the way they usually end up being successful. And then I ask them, can you relate that to your life? And what could you do to ask for help? And usually we have a meaningful conversation with that. The next game I like to do in my class is called Wizards and Gelflings. And I usually start this off with it almost sounds like a fairy tale, that the wizards and Gelflings don't get along. The Gelfling is a magical creature who is fluffy and likes to frolic. But in short, the wizards have a magic wand that can freeze Gelflings. And if they touch a Gelfling with their magic wand, they're frozen. And the only thing a Gelfling can do is call for help. And of course, you have to make it lots of fun. So I say, you have to call for help with putting your thumbs up and saying, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. And if a fellow Gelfling hears that and wants to come to your rescue, they have to come and run around 3 times of the frozen Gelfling, and then they are unfrozen. It's always a good idea to every so often switch out the wizards, so more than one student can get a turn at being that. Always, of course, make sure to set boundaries. But the real important thing is, what could you teach from this? What I usually try, especially at the beginning of the year, if I were to play this game, instead of saying, we all need to get along, I would ask them, I was like, how do you think it felt? How do you think the wizard felt during this game? And at first they're kind of confused, but then they start thinking about it, and they say, not good, Mr. Mullis. I don't think they felt well at all. And I asked them why, and they say because everyone was running away from him and her, and everyone was scared of them. And then I asked them, I was like, okay, what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen in our class? What can we do this year? Or what can we keep on doing to make sure everyone feels included and accepted and like we are one big happy family? So that's things I like to bring into team building, so students really get an understanding of what accepting someone is, from a concrete example of something that's more age appropriate. So this is almost my go-to for team building. It's very simple, no equipment really needed, and it's called Captain on Deck. Captain on Deck is a very simple game. The teacher would be the captain and the students would be the crew. The first thing, you will teach them the command. So the first command, if you say Captain on Deck, they must salute you until you say at ease. Another command is mop the deck, which is students just simply act like they are mopping the deck. And then Captain's Ball, which is when 2 students, our student gets a partner and they can act like they're dancing, or they can link elbows and walk in a circle. The third command is row your boat, which is in a group of 3. And they'll get in a line and start pretending to row an imaginary boat and singing row, row, row your boat. And the fourth one is Octopi, when students get back to back to back to back, and they wiggle their arms like they are an octopus. So the last command is Starfish, where 5 students get in a circle, put their hands in the middle, and then say they are a starfish. So obviously, depending what grade level you have, you may want to cut some of the commands out. It may be too many, but for some of the older grades, like 4th and 5th grade, and if you have 6th grade, you might want to ask them, okay, what else would I want to say on a pirate ship? So as you call it commands, and after you let them practice with each command, I ask my students, if I see that you're not, or if you're not one of the first people to do this command, then you have to walk the plank. Walking the plank usually in my class means they have to walk outside of the gym. And if you don't like that idea, by all means change it. But I think it teaches them a valuable lesson, especially at the beginning of the year. So after we go through the game once or twice, they start really getting into it. And we start asking, and I was like, what was hard about this game? What is easy? And they say, Mr. Mullis says it's really hard to follow all those directions. And I say, so what happens in this game if you didn't follow directions? And they tell me usually, you walk the plank. And then I ask them, okay, how is that similar to school? What consequences happen if you don't follow the rules? How can we avoid that? And then we have a discussion about, our classroom rules and how that applies to PE and how that applies outside the PE and what my expectations are. I also like to talk about how during this game, I ask them, were you successful if you stuck with just your friends? And they say no, because you have to, use different groups and different students during this game. So I asked them, so the point I'm trying to make is that to be successful in this game, you have to find a lot of new friends. And in PE, if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to go outside your comfort zone and try things that you've never tried before that may seem silly, or you may feel silly doing it first, or goofy, but that's not always a bad thing. So this Captain on Deck is a good way to ask students to step outside of their comfort zone, especially if you do this game at the beginning of the year. It seems like the older they get in, 4th and 5th grade, that they'd be more, they would be against, fake dancing with a partner. But you can talk about that, discuss that, about how just because something is new doesn't mean it's bad. And to be successful in PE, we're going to have to try new things and do our best. Alrighty, so I think it's time for a brain break. What I'm going to ask you to do, and I actually use these in my class, a great way to incorporate fitness in a fun way. They don't come on the computer, they're actual physical cards, but for this case, I just put them up. It's called Play Out. So what you can do is pick a whatever card you want and do easy, medium, or hard, and it explains the exercise just to get a little movement in. So I'll give you right about a minute to pick an exercise and do it. Ready, go. Alrighty, and we'll keep going here. Coming up next are ways that I've seen and used technology with team building, along with how to assess team building. And we'll talk about T-Chart, Rubrics, Journals, Plickers, and Google Docs. So here we go. The activity, and I've actually, I saw a presentation at the National PE Institute, and he explained what he did in his classroom, and I liked it a lot, so I thought I would share it with the people who are watching today. So students are placed into a group of 5 to 7, and they are provided an iPad and a QR scanner. And of course, you have to go into detail if your students have never used a QR scanner or if they've never used an iPad, go into detail about how to use that. And what was done in this activity is that different QR codes were spread out through the room. The students had to scan that and do that team building activity. And then at the end, they had to answer an exit slip question via Google Doc. So at the end, you give the students about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on your age and how much time you had in class, and they had to answer this Google Doc. And here's an example of, if I can find it. Oh, I don't know where it went. Okay, maybe we'll just move on then. Nope, here it is. There it is. Scavenger hunt questions. So this would be a great way for students to self-assess their group according to the activities they did. And just an example of something you could create if you wanted to use technology with team building, just to see how they did and to give a form of an assessment. So what the students actually completed were the different ones here. So he had, and if you actually scan these, if you have a QR code device, if you have an iPad or an iPhone or Android or whatever, you can actually scan this PowerPoint later and check out some of these activities that he used, which is, I thought, was a really great way to bring technology into team building and to have it more student-centered, so you wouldn't have to waste time explaining things. You know, the children would have to read them, or you could add a video to a QR code. So I thought that was a really cool idea. And then at the end of class, he would use a Plickers question. So they would rate themselves for a self-assessment and how they think they did today. And if you've never used Plickers before, there's a link on Tozzle, or you can just go to plickers.com and check those out because they're really neat. And if you don't have a whole lot of technology capabilities at your school, something you could use. This is something I like to do with my students as far as assessing team building. What I ask them, whatever we work on today, in this case, it'll be teamwork. I ask them, I say, you know, what should I hear if I hear teamwork? Or if teamwork's going on, what would I hear walking around the classroom? And they'll tell you different examples. And what I do is I usually just write them down either on the whiteboard or even a scratch piece of paper. And then I ask them, what, if I heard this, would it hurt teamwork? What is an example of stuff I don't want to hear? And they'll give you lots of examples of that. And then as we're doing whatever activity it is, I ask them, I go up to them and I tell my students, I expect to hear things that help teamwork. And at first, it may seem artificial or fake, but when the students really get in that culture and that habit of saying positive things and saying things that make teamwork or whatever you're trying to focus on for that day, it almost becomes habit and what you expect. So I think it's a really good idea to introduce it this way of what you want to hear. And at the end of class, hopefully you've been, taking notes on what they've actually said, and then you could talk about that and say, we've doing a really good job of promoting teamwork, or maybe a not so good job. So just an interesting way for you to assess if your students are really learning what is teamwork and what they need to do. Another example is Rubrics, and I found this at Open, which is a great resource, and they call it Games for Learning Personal and Social Responsibility. I call it Team Building. They have some great examples of rubrics along with self-assessments with smiley faces that could be used for your students. So if you have never checked out Open before, once again, the link is on the Tozzle, and I think it'd be a great way to self-assess your students or assess your students, and along with the self-assessment as well. So check that out. And we've already talked about a little bit about the Google Doc, but if you if that's not available to you because you don't have iPads, also just journal entries, having students write down, how did you show teamwork in class today? Why is respecting others important? Things of that nature are always good to have students reflecting and thinking about what they did in class today if it's a team building activity. So now I'm going to talk about some more activities that I like to do in my classes, and this is called the name dance. And I'll be honest, I was watching the Phys Ed Summit, and the person presenting showed this as a way to teach dance. And I thought, awesome, but it's also a great way to learn names and have students come out of their comfort zone because they have to make up a dance move, which for some is no problem, but there again, others, it really takes a big step. So what you would want to do is split your students into, a small group, maybe 5 to 8 on there. And then what would happen is the first person in their name or the first person in the group, whoever wanted to start, would have to know how many syllables. So my name is Adam. So Adam, that would be 2 syllables. So I have to make a dance move that matches that. And I always like to do the sprinkler. So I do the sprinkler to Adam, and then I have the whole group practice it with me. So we all do the sprinkler twice. So Adam. And then if the next person in line, let's say their name Bob, then Bob would only have 1 syllable. So Bob, they would make up a dance move as well. And whatever that dance move was, it could be, just stomping their feet or jumping up and down, whatever the students wanted it to be. And then the whole group will practice that dance move. And then you start from the beginning. So we'd go Adam with the sprinkler, and then whatever Bob decided, which in this case a jump, and we would do that dance move. And then that would continue around the entire circle until you knew everyone's name and everyone had a dance move. And then after that, you could have the students switch groups so they can learn more people's names, or even have their whole group present their dance, their name dance to the class, which I think would be really, when I tried it this year for the first time, and it went great, and the students really seemed to enjoy it, and they would dance, and they would do all kinds of crazy things and really get into it, especially with my 6th graders this year. So things that you could teach from this game, obviously, you're trying to learn names, and adding a movement to a name could be a great way to help some of your learners remember. I also teach that funny feeling, that scared feeling, and I asked my students, I was like, okay, do you think you'll ever feel that in PE? And then I usually go into the fact that, we all have strengths and weaknesses. Some of us are very good at dancing. Others might be very good at basketball. But whatever it is, if someone's not as skilled as we are, we need to bring them up and help them rather than, bringing them down or making fun of or laughing at them, because we want everyone to have an opportunity to learn. And I like to bring that into all games we do, and it's just a good thing to incorporate into team building. So I'm going to do another brain break, or a little movement here. So what I have done is I have I'm going to pull this video up, hopefully, if it'll work. I'm going to go to my Tozzle page. Nope, that's not it. Okay. I can go this way, that's fine. There we go. And if you're wondering how to do that, I'm giving you a tutorial right now. So this is something that another sorry about the commercial, but another PE teacher did, and I want you to dance along, get a little movement. It's something you could bring into your students as well. So here we go. Alrighty. And that is a dance that is extremely popular with my students right now, and they love it. If you're wondering what the dance moves are to that, you can the Ben Lander, who has a website that's right there with the PE specialist, has an excellent write up on that. He has a great website, so if that's something that interests you, definitely check that out. Here is another one that is a fantastic team building game. What you would do is you would divide the students into 2 or more groups, and provide each group with balloons and masking tape, and tell them the rules, which are you have exactly however long you want to give them to build a freestanding tower, but nothing with balloons and a roll of masking tape. Make sure to emphasize freestanding, nothing can support your tower, and allow each group some time to strategize. Of course, if you have any latex allergies, that's something to be aware of, and that if you don't want any student to be at the person who's blowing balloons for too long, because obviously we don't want anyone to get pass out or be injured. But if that's an issue, you could always have it blown up beforehand if you're working with a younger age group. But it's a great way to get the students excited, especially when balloons come out. Everyone gets excited about that. But once again, I ask, what could you teach from this? And I start off with my basic question. What do you like about this game? What didn't you like about this activity? And then I say, what was challenging? And they usually, I didn't think I could get my balloon tower very tall. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't think it was possible. And then usually with this game, if I try to do vertical balloon challenge, I want to hit on that type of thinking and discuss, how our mindset or what we think we can do affects what we can actually do. And the attitude that you bring into school or whatever else you want to do will affect that. So, for example, if you came, I always say to my students, for example, if you came into class saying, I hate whatever you're doing today, I hate throwing, I can't do it, then you're probably not going to be able to do it. So we have to be aware and try to have a positive attitude. And that's something that I think the vertical balloon challenge really demonstrates, that a lot of things are possible if we put our mind to it, if we work together, if we just spend some time and think about it. So Another activity that I love to do is called subtle shoestring. So what you would do is everyone finds a partner, and one partner has to be wearing shoes. Of course, they have to be at the age range where they can tie their shoes. So upper elementary would be a great one for this game. So one student would be kneeling on the ground while the other is standing up. And so what you ask these students to do is, the person standing up needs to untie their shoe, and that you can only use one arm per person, and you have to tie the shoe, and both people in every group have to participate. I think it's a great way to challenge students. You can ask them to do it blindfolded. You could ask them to do it with their non-dominant hand. Lots of different variations to this game. You definitely want to warn students about not bumping their head and being careful with their extremities to not hit anyone in the eye. But once again, I ask, what could you teach from this? This is a game that, not every student, especially in elementary school, may be able to succeed in. So that's something you could talk about. Is failure always a bad thing? Another thing you could talk about and help students realize is if you wanted to start talking about, a student with disabilities and how that could affect their life and how challenging it was to help students be empathetic, or realize how difficult it can be if you break an arm or anything like that, and help them start thinking about those things. That's something you can talk about as well. And of course, working together is critical. You could always ask them, if you and your partner worked well together, what did you do? What didn't you do? If you didn't work well together, why? And ask them questions of that nature. Another activity that's great, especially for the start of school, is called blind numbers. So basically, you need students to line up in some order, whether it be birthday, age, shoe size, or even assign numbers. And then you spread them out, give them a blindfold, and then ask them to get in order without communicating. This is a great game to try to focus on trusting each other, or if they trust each other or not, or if our just communication. For example, I like to use, I asked them, I was like, did you communicate without speaking? And at first they don't understand it because they think that communication is just through talking. However, communication can also be with our, our nonverbal signs and signals. And I usually like to talk about that, how even if you say nothing's wrong, but, you have a frown on your face and you're hunched over and you don't look very happy, that can affect your attitude. And that's what I like to talk about with blind numbers. Another one I think that my students, especially in the elementary age, enjoy the most is called Barnyard music. So students will need a partner, and each student will need, you can do it with a blindfold or without, and I'll explain that. Each student needs to have an individual noise of a different animal. It can be whatever animal. Just make sure to check each pair of students so they know what, so they have a different noise for each group. Then you ask the students to close their eyes or give them a blindfold, and then they have to find each other. Of course, you want to remind them to walk slowly because they will have their eyes closed, or they and they also need to put their hands out straight in front of them, and I call this their bumpers. So if they do, bump into somebody, it'll just be softly with their hands and to avoid collisions. I like to play this game without a blindfold, and that's because, students are very tempted to open their eyes, and it's a difficult thing to do, especially, if you're walking around in an unfamiliar area with a bunch of people, especially for children. But then we talk about, integrity, and I ask them, you think I'm going to be able to watch you and make sure you do the right thing every second of every class? And they usually say no. And then I ask them, can you relate that to this game we just played? And did you always keep your eyes closed even when I asked you to, or did you only do it when I was looking? And then we talk about integrity and why that's important, and just a fun way for them to start understanding my expectations and rules, and to help them learn about what these things are. So I believe this is the last activity I will talk about for today, and it's called Hospital Tag. In this game, you'll have 3 different positions, I guess you could say. There'll be the doctors, the germs, and patients. Most students will be patients, and then some doctors and germs, depending on your class size. The doctor's job is to heal the patients, and the germs' job is to tag the patients, and the patient's job is to stay away from the germs. Of course, you might want to give the germs and doctors something, so that will designate them. Sometimes I give the doctors a noodle and give the germs a ball, so they can tag people with, so everyone knows who is who. But I usually I let them play, and when the patients get tagged by the germs, they usually they can't use either one of their arms or their leg, and if they get tagged 4 times, they have to call a doctor for help so they can be healed, so they can join the game again. And you can play this lots of different ways, where if the patients are sick, then they can tag other people when they're sitting down, or you could have a safe zone where they can call for help from the doctors, and that's up to you. But of course, I have to ask, what could you teach from this, or what could you focus on? And I always start off, how is the game? Can you relate that to class in any way? Can you relate that to their rules and expectations? And, I asked them, I was like, just kind of like wizards and gelflings, how do you think the germs felt in this game? Would you want anyone to feel like that? What if someone, depending how deep you wanted to go, if someone didn't have clean clothes like you do every day, and trying to help them understand that, people have differences, and not everyone may have a house to go home to. And of course, you might be thinking, whoa, that's deep. But depending how what you wanted to teach the students and what you want them to learn from each game, that's just an example of how it could really apply back to the real world, and help them understand that everyone may be different or not as fortunate as other people. And I think that's important for students to realize that not everybody has something amazing to go home to, and something we just need to be aware of. So my other kind of big ideas from team building that I wanted to discuss is, I think it could be used for sure in health and other classrooms, and hopefully this presentation will give you some resources that you could be like, hey, try this activity in your class. Or of course you might have to modify it a little bit with space, but something to get students up and moving, and rather to just sit and get with other, which seems to be the case for a lot of teachers, especially at the beginning of school, actually give them a fun way to learn rules and expectations. At my school, we actually do team building the first few days with all teachers, and it's pushed down through our administration. And I would like to see, it done by grade level, so they really get that common experience and something they relate together and then reflect with them. And I think it's something that other PE teachers should try to bring to their school as well. And then teachers. So I am a new teacher. We talked about that earlier, and the first few days were very tough because just the amount of sitting. And I think team building activities would be a great way to get to know teachers and to have a little fun. And we could even talk about some issues, that we're having at the school or things we're doing well. And something that I hope to one day bring to, my school and my fellow teachers, and something I want to challenge other PE teachers to do as well. So I'll let you know how that goes. And I have big dreams, but we'll see. And in conclusion, if you want your students to understand your rules and expectations, work well with each other, learn to think outside the box, I think team building can be a great tool. I would suggest that you have them reflect on it is that you're going for. And hopefully, I hope this works out, and I hope this was helpful. My contact information, if you need anything, is mullis3@winthrop.edu. And my Twitter handle is PE_Mullis. I thank you for tuning in, and I hope that this gave you at least one idea that you could take back to your classroom. And honestly, feel free to steal or modify however you need. So let's see if we had any questions. All righty. Wendy, I think your mic is muted.
Oh,
there we go.
Now I need to talk. Thank you, Adam. Adam, I want to thank you for all the wonderful ideas, the mountains of ideas that you have shared with us. I want to thank you for all your ideas about how to question and debrief with your students, because it's all about learning and enduring learning. And I want to thank the Phys Ed Summit team for their leadership in providing this for all of us. And once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them on Tazzle or to contact Adam himself. And enjoy your evening. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Adam. Adam,
thank you.
I am overjoyed that this is your first year of teaching, and I am so impressed. If every one of our new teachers came out like you, this world would be a different place. So thank you so much for your hunger for learning and your risk-taking to come out and join us tonight. Thank you, Adam. And thank you all for joining us.
I just see so many amazing educators on Twitter and online. And if we're not willing to take risk and learn something, then how do we expect our students to? So it was a great opportunity, and I tried my best. So
you're great. Thank you, Adam, and thank you all. Good night.
All righty.